In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to close more deals, and we also are going to cover negotiation strategy towards the end of the video as well. My name is Trent Russell. I've spent the first 4 years of my career working in software sales, promoting my way from an SDR to a senior account executive. I've closed over $1 million in revenue, and the tips I share today are based on firsthand experience working large software sales deals. I believe many of the strategies and principles are actually universal. So no matter what you sell, no matter what deals you're trying to close, I believe that the information is going to provide you value. Where I want to start is a close plan. This is an iteration of my own sales game that I just learned how to do, and I believe it is working wonders, and I think it's going to help you a lot in your own sales career. When you are working a deal, you have a sales cycle. You need to prospect, you need to generate pipeline, you need to set up your initial meeting, maybe you have a discovery call, you go into a demo, it's then business consideration, and then eventually they're deciding, okay, am I going to select you? Am I going to select one of your competitors? When you're at that stage, you are really hoping to close the deal, and your actions will actually shape and influence the win rate and close time. So here's one exercise you can do with the customer. So for example, on my pricing calls, what I used to experience is that I would demo, I would give pricing, and then the prospect would go cold for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden they'd say, yeah, I just went with your competitor. All of a sudden we're not going to do anything. And it's really frustrating. So here's one thing you can do. When you are on that pricing call, you talk about your business case, which we're going to cover in a minute. How do you actually justify business value? What does that look like? When you do that, you then present pricing and then pull up a slide with this picture right here. And I actually fill this out custom, especially for the larger deals. The first row here you see is basically vendor selection. So your prospect, this may be the first time they're ever buying software or your product or solution. Their company may have never spent on this category of service solution software before. So you need to educate them on how can they easily buy your solution. Imagine when you were trying to get car insurance, and I went through this recently. They actually cold called me, and I happened to be in the market for car insurance. And I said, look, I don't care what you say. I need it. I have a compelling event. I want to buy. And they overcomplicated the process for me to the point where I almost went out of my way to find another provider because he was doing everything he could to overcomplicate the process. I did not understand, where do I pay? How do I get it going? I just want this set up and I want to stop thinking about it. Your prospect is the same way. You need to make it easy for them to buy. So what you need to do is you need to ask the hard-hitting questions. And rather than doing this in a disorganized way, you can go about it methodically and start with vendor selection and put a date by it and say, okay, my understanding is that your contract with your existing vendor ends mid-July. So you would probably need to make a selection sometime late June, early July in order to make sure there's no gap in service. Is that still the case? And ask them, what other vendors are you evaluating? And start to get a sense of, are you their vendor of choice? And then most importantly, as we think about decision process, and this is, if there's anything you take away from this video, it's this point right here. What is the decision process? And this can change throughout a sales cycle. Let's say your first conversation is with a director. They introduce you to their VP and you say, I got it. I'm connected with the VP. This is a one deal. You go into your forecast meeting and say, yeah, it's a probable deal. And then all of a sudden you wait until too late in the deal and you say, well, what is your process? Meaning from the time you see the demo and get a price, how do you actually make a purchasing decision? And then they may say, blah, blah, blah. And then later in the deal, you learn, well, it actually needs to go to our CHRO, the economic buyer, Sally. She needs to sign off on it. And then once she signs off on it, she actually needs to take it to our CFO to get budget approval. And then all of a sudden, you go back and say, wait, so we don't have budget. We're going to have to justify a business case. I haven't actually spoken with Sally. And who's your CFO? And then all of a sudden, the decision process, there's all these steps, there's all these nuanced communications, stakeholders that you need to impress that maybe you weren't aware of early in the sales cycle. So it's really important early in the sales cycle to understand and map out who are the players, who are you speaking with, what do they care about? Are they a program owner who is going to care about low-level features? So when you're in your discovery calls, you're appeasing them with all of your great automated solutions, but then all of a sudden when you try and justify the business value to the VP and they say, well, I actually don't care about those. I care about reducing turnover. I care about increasing revenue, mitigating risk. Meanwhile, you haven't talked about that or built that into your business case. So it's really important to understand that decision process. And when you clearly understand that, you can then start to reverse engineer and say, okay, you need to make a vendor selection by this date. Who will actually be signing? This is a key question to ask as well. Ask, who will be signing the contract? And then the purpose of all of this is to understand how do they make the decision and when do they make the decision by. And once they ultimately make the decision and say, you are our vendor of choice, and you start to celebrate, keep in mind, this is when the work really starts. I can't tell you how many deals last year. I was working on one deal with a credit union. They said, yeah, we're going to buy. We're good to go. Everyone's on board. I say, perfect. I send them the contract. Next thing you know, 3 weeks have gone by. I'm waiting for red lines. And then all of a sudden I get a communication from my stakeholders saying, well, after further consideration, blah, 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 we're going to go with this other vendor. It's someone, and it doesn't make any sense. It's once you get that vendor of choice, that's when the work really begins. So pulling up this graph again, what you need to see is once you get that vendor of choice, you then need to understand, okay, is there a legal review? Is there a security review? What steps do you have to actually onboard us as a vendor? So for example, they may say, yeah, well, if you are selected as our vendor of choice, then we get you in contact with procurement. And what you'll know based on experience is that when you're trying to close a deal and working with procurement, and you may have given your prospect your best offer you can give from a pricing standpoint, procurement's going to come in and then all of a sudden say, well, we need a 10% discount because that's how they're incentivized, the difference between price of what they come in at and what they actually sign for. So there's these really important steps that your buyer may or may not be aware of. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible on them as you can. So you need to go through this exercise and understand what is your decision process? How do you actually go about selecting us as a vendor? How do you actually go about getting the deal done? And then what are those steps you need my help with to align on? And the better you understand that, the more you can mitigate risk around the deal, which will improve your ability to close. And it will also help you proactively start to align resources from your end to those necessary steps that the buyer needs. And then, of course, who's signing the contract, and then get them to sign the contract. And throughout this cycle, clearly outline to them what are next steps that they can expect. How do we make it as easy as possible on them as you can? Well, we have a 6-week implementation. So if you sign by this date, we can be live by August 16th, for example. It's going to require these resources. Once you sign, your license will be activated. We'll schedule a kickoff call this date. And the easier you can make it for them, the better, because you want to reduce stress for them so that they enjoy working with you more. And this will improve your ability to do business in the future. So at this point, you may have 2 questions. Trent, how do I justify the business value? What does that actually look like business case? And then also negotiation. What are some strategies for that? As we think about justifying business value, this could be an entirely separate video. So let me know if there's any questions on that or if you'd like to see a specific video on how I prepare a business case. But a general methodology and framework you can use that we use in my company, it's called VET, V-E-T, Vision, Execution, Technology. Throughout your discovery, understanding metric, economic buyer, decision maker, process, what does positive outcomes look like, what are the negative consequences, pain of their existing solution, you need to understand all of these aspects so that you can clearly state the vision and say, your team is experiencing pain with your solution today because it's not automated. This is causing loss in productivity and an inability to make data-driven decisions, which is actually costing you $1 million a month, let's say. Our solution is going to help you to save money and actually improve revenue in the long run by empowering stakeholders at all levels throughout your business to make more data-driven decisions in real time. For example, I'm throwing around a lot of buzzwords at this point. You need a clear vision of what's at stake and why it matters. Next, execution. How are you going to help them get there? How are they going to recognize quick time to value? Why should they trust what you're saying? This is when you need to talk about the services and how you bring the program to life and make it real to them. And then finally, T, technology. This is when you actually talk about your unique features of the technology and how, as a result of the automated analytics, it's actually going to help them to improve revenue. So we use the VET framework to help build out this point of view. But there's a lot of steps that go into this that I could cover in another video if you think that would be helpful. When negotiating, here's one pro tip, and then we're going to end the video, is it's a give and get. So you can't just give. Early in my career as an account executive, I'd get on these meetings And they would say, well, we want you, but the price. And I'd say, what do you need the price to be? And I'd give them a discount, no problem. Now, if I ever get that pricing thing, it's okay. Well, we believe it's a competitive price because of XYZ reasons. What about the price is a problem? What would you hope to do with the savings? Why do you need that? Understand the objection so that you can then go back and say, well, if we can get you that discount, then could you sign by this date? And then use that to your advantage as leverage to actually drive a compelling event to shorten these deal cycles. That's just one example around pricing. There could be other objections and negotiations, such as them leveraging stakeholders against you, or time. A big part of this is money and timing. That's where a lot of the negotiation pieces are going to come in play. So you want to go in calm, you want to understand the objection, and you never want to give without getting anything in return. It's counterintuitive because you should, in life as a human, I like to give without expecting anything in return. As a professional salesperson, I will never give without expecting something in return. And that's a general principle in negotiation that will help you get your way, win more deals, close them faster. And that's the purpose of today's video, to help you win more deals. If you found value in today's video, hit the like button now, subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one, and go subscribe to my podcast channel. It's the first link in the description below. I'd really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day. Go close some deals.